Okay, so you're here because you want to get smart, fast, about something interesting.
And today, that something is city skylines.
Exactly. We're doing a deep dive into a list, 10 of the most beautiful city skylines. It's from an article, 10 Most Today, published back in July 2013.
Right, so the data's from then, but the principles, what makes a skyline striking, that's timeless.
Our mission here is to, well, go beyond just looking at pretty pictures. We want to unpack what makes these specific city silhouettes stand out.
Understand the design, the context.
Yeah, maybe even spark a few of those, aha moments about these big urban landscapes we see or live in.
It's less about just ranking them, isn't it? More about figuring out the ingredients, what makes them so visually compelling, memorable even.
Good way to put it. This list, it's a great jumping off point to see how different places approach building cities.
Absolutely. All over the globe.
Okay, let's get into it. Starting with, well, arguably the king of recognizability, New York City.
You see that skyline, you know it instantly. No question.
Right. The article mentions those classic views like the big panorama from across the river.
Yeah.
Really shows the density.
Display to scale, yeah.
And then being in it, looking out from, say, the Empire State Building or the GE Building, which is Rockefeller Center now.
And what's so fascinating about New York, it's not just the height, though obviously that's huge. It's the history, etched right there in steel and glass.
How so?
Well, think about the early skyscrapers. They were these massive symbols of economic power, new technology.
Race upwards.
Totally. Driven by the fact they just didn't have much land to spread out on. And then over time, you get layers, different architectural styles, setbacks, spires.
Yeah.
And it tells the story of the city's growth.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, next up, let's jump across the world to Hong Kong.
Another icon.
Definitely. The article points to the view from Victoria Peak. And that's a serious viewpoint, 552 meters. What's that, 8,811 feet?
That's way up there. And the journey itself is part of it, apparently.
Yeah, it mentions the Peak Tram. It says getting there is part of the experience.
Yeah. Well, the key thing with Hong Kong visually is that dramatic contrast. You've got this super dense city crammed against these really steep hills.
Like the natural terrain.
Exactly. And seeing all that concentrated energy spread out below you from that high up, it's powerful. It gives you real perspective.
So the peak isn't just a lookout point.
No, it's integral to the city's geography. It shapes how you even see the buildings.
Interesting. Okay, sticking with big buildings, let's talk Chicago.
The birthplace of the skyscraper, some say.
The article highlights the Willis Tower, still Sears Tower in my head, probably for many people.
Yeah, me too.
And Trump Tower. But it also makes a point about the backdrop, Lake Michigan, how that huge lake frames the city.
Oh, absolutely. That lake provides this incredible visual counterpoint, to all that vertical steel and glass.
How does it do that?
Well, you have this clean, seemingly endless flat horizon of water, and it just emphasizes the scale of the skyscrapers, makes them feel even more monumental.
Ah, I see. The contrast.
It's a really powerful mix of the man-made and, well, the grandeur of nature. Plus, you see Chicago's planning legacy there, too, right? With the lakefront kept mostly public, giving you those amazing views.
Right. Okay, let's head east now to Shanghai, China. Back in 2013, the article notes, this was the world's most populous city. Huge economic engine.
Something like 17.8 million people then. Staggering.
And a standout feature in its skyline. That really unique Oriental Pearl Tower. One of the tallest structures there.
Yeah, the Pearl Tower is definitely different. It doesn't look like your typical skyscraper.
Those spheres.
Exactly. Those spherical bits give it a really distinctive silhouette. Almost futuristic,
And its prominence says something.
I think so. It reflects Shanghai's meteoric rise as this global economic powerhouse. The skyline itself is kind of a visual symbol of that ambition, that modernity.
Gotcha. Okay, next stop is Singapore. And this one's got an interesting twist.
Oh, what's that?
Air traffic control restrictions. They limit building height to 280 meters, or about 919 feet.
Ah, right. So that affects the overall look.
Yeah, the article suggests it's led to this really consistent building height, a kind of pattern in the development. And that actually enhances the city's design.
That makes Singapore a really compelling case study, doesn't it? How planning and rules can directly shape the visual feel of a city.
Seems like it. It also mentions Singapore's reputation for being super clean.
Mm-hmm. So those height limits, they haven't stopped development, but they've encouraged this sense of architectural harmony, cohesion.
Deliberate choice.
Yeah, prioritizing a balanced, integrated cityscape. And while Okay, cleanliness isn't part of the skyline itself. It adds to that overall impression, right? Of a place that's well designed, well cared for.
Right. Okay, from that sort of orderliness, we jump to the energy of Bangkok, Thailand.
Big shift.
Yeah, described as this massive, dense city just bursting with life, with culture. Had 8.2 million people back then, according to the article, and still growing fast.
Bangkok's beauty is maybe less about individual architectural icons.
Like New York or Sydney.
Exactly. And more about the sheer scale, the dynamism, this huge, sprawling urban place.
So the skyline reflects that.
Probably reflects that layered complexity, yeah.
Yeah.
A mix of old temples, modern high-rises, everything in between. It's like a visual map of a city that's constantly changing, constantly expanding.
Okay. Let's head further east again to Tokyo, Japan.
Another giant.
The article notes its skyline is impressive, but with several different focal points, not just one dominant center.
Which makes sense for a city that vast,
Yep.
right?
And it specifically calls out Tokyo Tower, mentions its nighttime lights, how they change color.
That idea of multiple focal points, it speaks to Tokyo's immense size and its diverse urban fabric. It isn't dominated by just one or two buildings. The visual interest is more spread out.
And its tower?
Tokyo Tower, yeah, with its changing lights.
No.
It adds this dynamic, almost playful element after dark. It's like a familiar beacon within that huge expanse.
Cool. All right, now let's slice south, way south to Sydney, Australia.
Ah, Sydney Harbor.
Instantly recognizable, right? As Australia's biggest city, its skyline gets that recognition mainly from two specific icons, the Sydney Opera House and the Harbour Bridge.
Absolutely. And Sydney's skyline owes so much of its fame to how perfectly those structures work with the harbor itself.
The setting is key.
It's crucial. The Opera House with those unique sail-like shapes and the majestic arch of the bridge. They aren't just buildings, they're symbols. They immediately say Sydney.
And they fit the waterfront so well.
Perfectly placed, perfectly designed for that spot.
Okay, nearly there. Penultimate stop.
Yeah.
Sao Paulo, Brazil.
Another massive one, population-wise.
Yeah, the article describes it differently, though. A huge sprawl of buildings, mostly apartment blocks, only a few taller than 200 meters.
So, not defined by height like some others.
Seems not. But the population was enormous, around 20 million then, making it the second biggest city in the Americas after Mexico City.
Sao Paulo is a really fascinating contrast to the skyscraper cities we've talked about. Its beauty, maybe, lies in its sheer overwhelming scale, that intricate tapestry of its urban fabric.
A sea of buildings.
Exactly. It reflects that immense population, its role as this major hub. It's a different kind of visual impact, more about the collective mass than individual showstoppers.
Interesting perspective. Okay. Finally, we land in Seoul, South Korea.
Rapidly developed, lots of change there.
The article points out its division into distinct districts, business, residential, cultural, entertainment zones. And it notes that a lot of its recent growth was driven by residential towers.
Having those planned districts suggests a very deliberate approach to organizing the city.
Makes sense.
And the growth coming from residential towers, well, that reflects rapid urbanization, right? A focus on housing a big population.
So what does that mean for the skyline?
It might mean a skyline that looks very modern, very functional. Different areas might have distinct architectural styles based on what they're for business versus residential, for instance.
Got it. So wow, we've really hopped around the globe.
We have.
From instantly known landmarks to cities shaped by planning rules to just these vast, sprawling megacities.
It's clear that what counts as beautiful in a skyline is, well, it's really varied.
Definitely in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah.
And seems deeply tied to each city's unique story, its context.
Exactly. What's really insightful, I think, is understanding how all these different things, geography, money, culture, even regulations, how they all play a part in shaping that unique visual identity.
Which brings us to a final thought for you listening. Thinking about all these examples, these different styles, what elements really resonate with you when you picture a beautiful city skyline?
Is it the soaring height? Or maybe those iconic one-off structures?
Or perhaps how the city blends with nature? Or is it just the sheer density, the energy you feel looking at it?
And maybe think about what your preference says about the kind of urban environment you find most compelling.
Yeah, or even what values do we kind of implicitly link to our cities through their skylines? Which of these ways of developing a city seems most successful and, well, why? Something to mull over.